How do people react when they find out that you believe the Bible? Many people react with a sense of maybe disbelief, shock. How could any thinking person in this day and age still believe that? When Christians are portrayed on the media, when you see a Christian in a TV program, often it gives a very negative impression of what Christians are like. And Christians throughout the world suffer in many different ways. In many other countries, they suffer much more severely than we suffer here. According to Church in Chains, the Irish organisation that seeks to help the persecuted church, Christians are being persecuted today in 60 different nations in our world. Just to give an example of the persecution that's taking place in one of those nations, in Nigeria, hundreds of Christians have been martyred this year alone. Why are Jesus' followers treated so badly? Well, if we want to know why Jesus' followers are treated so badly, we need to think about how Jesus was treated. And we're going to do that this morning, looking at the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verses 16 to 32. And the first thing that we see here is that Jesus is treated badly by everyone. Jesus has been condemned to death. He's taken away by the soldiers. And the soldiers gather their whole company together and they mock him. They gather the whole company to do this. They didn't think it was enough for those with the responsibility of taking him away to mock him, but they get everyone else in as well. They dress him as a king. They dress him in a purple robe. They put a crown of thorns on his head. And they call out, "Hail, King of the Jews." They strike him on the head repeatedly. We're told that they do it again and again. And they spit on him, as the religious leaders had done earlier when they were supposed to be trying him in chapter 14 and verse 56. They mock him. They fall down before him. They pretend to worship him and revere him. But they're just making fun of him. And after they've done that, they take the purple robe off him and put his own clothes on him. And they lead him out to crucify him. He's crucified, and as he's hanging there on the cross, other people mock him as well. Those who pass by hurl insults at him. Verse 29. They shake their heads and they say, "So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself. If you're able to do anything, rescue yourself. Come down from the cross now. And the religious leaders do the same thing. The chief priests, the teachers of the law. They say, he saved others. He can't save himself. He's the Messiah. He's the King of Israel. Now come down now from the cross. Then we'll believe you. Then we'll trust you. And even those who are crucified with him insult him. It's unusual for anyone to be so badly treated by everyone else. Everyone around is mocking Jesus and ridiculing him and making fun of him. If you were to think of a person in a courtroom, this would be like the police and the security guards mocking them, making fun of them, ridiculing them. That's like what the Roman soldiers did to Jesus. It would be like those in the public gallery making fun of the person as well. That's like those who passed by, the crowds that were in Jerusalem at this time. But as well as that, it would be like the judge or the jury making fun of the person who was being tried. Here we're told that the chief priests, the teachers of the law, these are the people who had tried Jesus. They join in making fun of him. It would also be like the fellow accused, those who are being accused along with the person making fun of him. The criminals here being crucified with Jesus also hurl insults on him. Everyone is mocking him. Everyone is laughing at him. And as they do that, the crowds and the religious leaders both mock Jesus and say, come down from the cross. The religious leaders say, do it so that we can see and believe. You want us to believe in you. If you're able to do that, we'll believe in you. Jesus could have come down from the cross. He said in Matthew 26, verse 53, do you not think that I can call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way? Jesus could have been rescued from the cross, but he chose not to, so that he could save his people. The crowds tell him, save yourself. The religious leaders say, he saved others, but he can't save himself. He could have saved himself, but he chose not to save himself so that he could save others. How do you feel when you think of Jesus on the cross? Do you feel pity for him? Do you despise him like the people here did? Do you ever mock at what he did? Jesus endured all of this in order to save people like you. Do you realize that you need to be saved? That you're not right with God? Jesus is the one who can make you right with God. He's the one who can take away your sins. He's the one who can get you forgiveness. He's the one who can fix that relationship. Will you come to him? Will you ask him to forgive you? Will you trust in him? If you do, he will. That's the first thing we see here. Jesus is treated badly by everyone. Secondly, we see that Jesus is treated badly because he is the King of God's people. That was why he was killed. That was the charge that was against him. We're told the written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." That's what he was guilty of. That's why he was executed. That was actually written there for everyone to see. And that's why he's being mocked. The Roman soldiers, when they bow down before him, they say, "Hail, King of the Jews." They're mocking him as the King of God's people. Even the religious leaders say, "Let this Messiah, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross that we may see and believe." Again, they're mocking him as the King of God's people. He's suffering all of this as our leader, as our representative, in our place. Many hardline Republicans hate the Queen of England. But they've never met the Queen of England. They know nothing about her as a person. They know nothing about what she's really like. And so in a sense, they don't hate her as a person. Instead, they hate what she represents. And that's what it's like here with Jesus. They hate what he represents. They hate the fact that he is the King of God's people. They hate God and his people. And here Jesus is suffering as our King in our place. Many people will suffer and even die for their King. That has been proven in many, many different wars. But here things are the other way round. They're upside down, they're back to front. Here our King suffers and dies for us. So Jesus is treated badly by everyone. Jesus is treated badly because he is the King of God's people. Thirdly, Jesus' followers will be treated badly. Mark tells us about Simon in verse 21. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing on his way in from the country. They forced him to carry the cross. Why does Mark tell us about Simon? Well, he tells us about Simon because it happened, but there were a lot of other things that happened that Mark left out. Why does he choose to include this one? Well, I think maybe one of the reasons he does it is to show us that as Jesus suffers, others suffer with him. He tells us that Simon was forced to carry Jesus' cross. And maybe he wants us to think of the only other place in his gospel that he mentioned the word cross. Chapter 8 and verse 34. Mark chapter 8, verse 34. And Jesus called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." If we want to be one of Jesus' followers, he tells us that we must be willing to take up our cross. As he took up his cross, we must be willing to suffer alongside him. If this is how they treated our King, it's how they will treat us as well. Jesus said in John 15, verse 20, "Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also." If ISIS wants to kill our Taoiseach, our leader, you can be sure that they'd be more than happy to kill us as well. If people wanted to kill Jesus, our leader, you can be sure that there'll be some of them will be more than happy to do exactly the same to us. We shouldn't expect everyone to think well of us. We want people to think well of us. We like it when people think well of us. But we need to be prepared for the fact that they will not all think well of us. And we need to focus on what Jesus thinks of us, not what other people think of us, or what other people think of us will shape us and mold us. Jesus told us in Matthew 10, verse 28, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell." We're not to fear what people around us can do to us. All they can do is harm us physically. Instead, we're to be concerned about what God thinks of us. We're to aim to please him. As the Apostle Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 4, we are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. And so it shouldn't surprise us when people are shocked that we believe the Bible, or when Christians are portrayed negatively on TV, or when they're persecuted in so many countries across this world, or even when so many of them are martyred. It saddens us. But this is how they treated our Saviour. And so this is how they will treat us. And whenever we face opposition, whenever we have to suffer for being a Christian, we should think of what Jesus suffered here, of how he was insulted, of how he was mocked, of how he was ridiculed. We should thank him for what he's done for us. And we should ask him to help us, to give us the strength to stand alongside him, to stand with him, to suffer with him. When we think of what he has done for us, surely that should motivate us to be willing to endure anything for him. What they say to us is nothing compared to what they said to him. What they do to us is nothing compared to what they did to him. Out of thankfulness for what he's done for us, we should be willing to suffer alongside him. And yet often we're reluctant, aren't we? What is it that holds us back? What is it that stops us? Sometimes it's the fear of people, of what those around us will think. Sometimes it's the fear of losing out. Again, it would do us good to remind ourselves of what Jesus said in Mark 8. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. When we suffer as Christians, it's not so that we will earn God's favour. Jesus has already done that as he died on the cross. He has earned God's favour for us. Why are Jesus' followers treated so badly? It's because people are treating us like they treated Jesus. And while that can be incredibly difficult, to be grouped with Jesus is always a privilege.